I hope everyone has enjoyed today's wonderful sessions. My name is Nathaniel Gale, and I'm the Assistant Director of Athletic Communications at Florida Tech, and I'll be moderating today's final session. Luckily, I have the honor to introduce Day 2's final speaker, the NCAA's Vice President of Communication, Bob Williams. Bob is an industry leader, and in this session, he is going to share his vast knowledge to help us all formulate strategies to tackle the media spotlight. Welcome to the symposium, Bob.
Well, thank you very much. I have to apologize. Literally, as I was connecting via Zoom, my internet went down, which is kind of par for the course as it relates to this presentation. Originally we had discussed all being together and being able to present in front of you. We then had to switch gears because of COVID and go to a Zoom or remote meeting. And lo and behold, the internet gods made sure that that wasn't going to work for me either. So I apologize for having to be on the phone. But hopefully we will be able to have a really meaningful session and really get into some questions and deep into the issues as it relates to communications in 2020 and beyond. I also must admit that, I've changed my presentation 3 times now, from when we were going to be in person and then when we were remote, and now, in reflection to what is happening, or what has happened and what is happening in our country over the last week and a half or so, I kind of threw out my originals and decided to kind of go in a different direction. What I'd like to do is really start out initially talking about this communications environment that we all operate in. It's really unlike any environment that we've experienced in the past, and I dare say it's going to get even more challenging in the future. So when I started in this business over, 35 plus years ago, there was this thing called the news cycle. And the news cycle kind of ended at, late in the afternoon, just before the nightly news started. So, it peaked in the afternoon, and then it kind of sloped off in the evening, and then you knew by the next day, the next morning, the news cycle would start all over again. As you all are well aware, that news cycle doesn't exist today. It is constant. Back when I started in this business, we knew that if something happened in the world or something happened relating to our organization or the business that we had at hand, we had anywhere from 2 to 5 hours to really formulate our story and develop our message points and our strategy. That's measured in minutes today. You literally have minutes from the time news is made until the time you are expected to be able to respond. That in and of itself creates some significant challenges. Additionally, today, no matter where you're at, no matter the size of your school, your organization, you have the potential of making not national news, but global news. Because the nature of this business is that all news is both instantaneous and global. And obviously, that's because of several factors. One being the digital nature of the world that we live in. And secondly, it's the changing nature of media. Media is a 24/7 operation. There has to be content to fill those 24 hours, 7 days a week. Additionally, those that we view as the media has expanded exponentially. Now media is anyone with a cell phone. We see that dynamic playing out literally in front of our eyes right now. The unfortunate, devastating incidents in Minneapolis last week really highlighted that. An individual with a cell phone bought the focus of the world on Minneapolis police and police brutality. That same thing is playing out all day today in the demonstrations. Everything is recorded. Everything is news. So with that, we need to be prepared to operate in that environment. With the news media, they traditionally have balanced speed with accuracy. And it was normally a pretty even balance. That balance is not the same today. Speed wins out. Whoever is first wins. And I've had several interesting conversations with media when they have gone with a story that is just factually wrong. And their response has been, well, don't worry about it, Bob. We'll correct it online. Well, I do worry about it because the story's wrong. That puts us in a very, very challenging position. Because all of us, we have to balance both. We have to be able to get our messages out quickly, but we also have to be accurate. Accuracy is key in our business because in this business, with credibility and your word, you really only get one chance at this. So what I'd like to talk a little bit more about today is how can we be successful in this reality, this communications reality that we have today. And I kind of like to look at it in three different areas. One is preparation, second is teamwork, and the third is engagement. So let's kind of go through some of those. In terms of preparation, you have to prepare to communicate just like you would prepare if you were on a team for a game. Communications is not a pickup game. You don't go into an interview, a press conference, a webinar as if it's a pickup game. You go into it as if it's the Final Four. You've practiced, you've prepared, you've worked out different scenarios, and you're ready to win. So let's talk a little bit about this preparation. First and foremost, you need to master the issues. And sometimes those issues become your issues because there's somebody else's issues beforehand. And I'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But you need to be the master of the issues when you're doing an interview or you're communicating. That's what the expectation is, that you're the expert. So with that, obviously, you need to know the background and the facts. the background of the issue, where it started, what's been said about it, who said what about it, what your leadership is saying. All of those things you need to take into account. And then also you need to know facts. Facts are very important, but facts alone are not the story, and I'll get into that in a minute. The most important thing in preparation is build the story that you want to be told. Now, it seems second nature, but you would be surprised. You need to go about this thinking about, when I do this interview, when I give this presentation, when I'm in this media availability, when I'm in this webinar, what's the headline that I want to see, going across the ESPN ticker or on the website? What is it? What's that one thing that I want people to come away with? And that's where you start to build your story. And it literally is a story. There is a skill set that has developed in the communications world called storytelling. People today are no longer just interested in somebody's position or a series of talking points. The way to be effective today is to be able to build the story so that an audience wants to believe you, that they can believe you, and that they can readily repeat what you've said, which is key. Part of that is knowing the facts, as I had mentioned earlier. Part of it is what we call mastering the soundbite. That one sentence that no matter what, people walk away with and say, that's what this is all about, right here. That sentence, those 5 words, and have it be repeatable. And then let me kind of tie together the importance of the relationship between facts and context, okay? Both are very important, but as I said earlier, facts aren't the story. Context is the story. So facts are the basis. They're the foundation of your message. But as I said before, they're not your message. They help build the story. They help to build your specific point of view, and they help audiences believe you. So normally when I am face-to-face with groups, this is a lot easier because I can walk you through an exercise. I'm still going to try it in this format, even though it's going to be a little more challenging. So if I were to simply throw out a fact, and that fact said 42% graduation rate. Ask yourself, is that positive or negative? Most would think that that's negative, right? Because the expectation is it should be much higher. Let me add a little context. African-American male student athletes have a 42% graduation rate. Does that make it better or worse? Many people will say, well, that's worse. Let me add some more context for you. African-American males male student athletes graduate at a rate of 42%, which is 11% higher than their African American male non-athlete counterparts. That changes the story. That puts things in context. It still is not a great number. There's still a lot of work to do, but it puts it in context. And that's key really in this preparation stage when you're preparing to communicate, to really think about your messaging in a different way and how you build your story to support your position and how you use facts to build context to persuade people. And that's the key. Next, looking at teamwork. You know, this is really important from a communication standpoint. The real question that you need to ask yourself is, if you are an administrator and you have a challenge that you're about to face, you need to ask yourself, who do I need at the table with me? Who needs to be able to provide me differing points of view? Who will be able to challenge my assumptions so that we can work everything out around the table and not have the media work it out online? I would say at a minimum, as you are figuring out who that needs to be, in most instances, you'll need your legal advisor. You'll need your administrative experts, obviously. In many cases, you'll need a medical expert. And you're also going to need communications expertise. Your athletics communication professional, as well as your university relations communication professional. And that's really key. I cannot tell you the number of times when I've received calls from member schools who are about to face real communication challenges, national challenges. And I get on a conference call and there's no communications people on the call. Or there's athletic communications, but not university relations, or vice versa. I've even had experiences where literally I've had to set up a conference call between athletic communications folks and university communications folks to get them on the same page. All of that has to be seamless. All of those relationships have to be built ahead of time. That trust, that teamwork needs to be forged outside of the crisis so that when the crisis hits, you're an integral working team that can then solve problems. So let's talk a little bit about engagement when it comes time. I've touched a little bit on this earlier. First and foremost, you know, and it sounds elementary, know what you want to say. What's the headline you want? And then deliver it. I've done media training with senior people, prepared them, had their talking points all laid out, had the story all laid out, and then when it came time to deliver, it was something other than what we had talked about. And it went into, you know, either bureaucracy speak or or, you know, to be blunt, an incoherent collection of words. Know what you want to say and deliver it. My dad used to say, and you all have probably heard this, say what you mean and mean what you say. The key to effective communications is clarity. And unfortunately, many people think that the key to effective communications is a lot of words. It's not. Clarity is the key. Second, always tell the truth. We hammer this home over and over and over again when we are providing media training. I spent a lot of time in the military before getting into intercollegiate athletics and dealt with many senior leaders and training them for both media engagements as well as testimony on Capitol Hill and the like. And it was amazing for me to have to always revert back to this notion of the truth is number one. That's true in higher education, it's true in government, it's true in business, it's true in education, it's true in every single aspect of business in the world today. But unfortunately, people still have a problem with zeroing in and telling the truth, when in reality, it's the easiest thing in the world to do. As a matter of fact, Mark Twain has a famous quote, says, if you tell the truth, you don't have anything else to remember. And this is something that is a key takeaway. Always tell the truth. Always. Reporters have this thing called the internet. I can guarantee if you do not tell the truth, if you are not factual, all they're going to do is Google it. And then that story for you personally is much worse. So that is the basis of everything that we do when it comes time to engage. Tell the truth. Now, that doesn't mean you have to blurt out every single aspect of an issue. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, you know, I'm not at liberty to talk about that. But when individuals start trying to talk around an issue is when the trouble starts. I'd covered the facts and the context before, but again, that is the key to delivering your message. You need to be able to deliver your message so your audiences can and will believe you. That's why you need to engage. And again, you only get one shot at credibility. So a couple of closing thoughts on my comments, and then I'd really like to get into some of the questions and answers. We are in a very challenging, to say the least, communications environment today. So I'd ask all of you, you know, are you thinking about what those challenges are going to be like when students are back on campus? You know, we have COVID still there. What's the plan if you have a student athlete outbreak? What's the plan if your student athletes start expressing concerns, health concerns about the environment? I don't see how any of us are going to get through a fall with the societal issues that are going on right now without Take a Knee becoming front and center again. The enormous financial issues associated with COVID and everything that's happened over the last several months. These are the sorts of things that as leaders, we need to start thinking about and making sure that we have both the facts, the context, and the answers so that we can move forward. And with that, I'll close and happy to open it up for any questions that you might have. And again, I apologize for not being able to see any of you, but the internet gods decided otherwise for me today.
Thank you, Bob, for those amazing opening remarks. I'll lead off the questions with, as you mentioned earlier, that today the media is all around us, be it an individual with a cell phone to a traditional news crew. What are some of the best practices to avoid giving the media a negative soundbite?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. You know, first of all, you know, I look at world events differently than I ever did before. So when something happens in the world, I start looking at it through the lens of how will this affect me and how might I have to deal with this issue in athletics, even though it may not be directly related to athletics. So I'd say, first of all, a different outlook on the world around you. The world is very, very small now. And we have to be in a position where we're able to take all this information that's happening around us and very, very quickly be able to apply it to our business. And that hasn't always been the case. And quite frankly, that's not a skill set that comes naturally. You really have to work at that. And also I'd say more than ever, the ability to take yourself out of, you know, your comfort zone of being an athletics administrator and being able to look at issues in different ways, because they're going to come at you in many, many different ways. I hope that kind of gets to what you were asking.
Yes. So another one, sometimes in situations with the media, the conversation will start going in an uncomfortable direction. How do you steer that conversation back to something that fits you more?
I'm sorry, your audio broke up. I only heard about the first half of the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes. How do you steer a conversation if it's moving in an uncomfortable direction?
Yeah. Well, one of the techniques that you use is what we call bridging. So if you're there to talk about, you know, say for instance, you're there to talk about COVID, and the reporter starts going off on a tangent on a bunch of other subjects. You know, one of the things that you do is you bridge back to what you want to talk about. Because remember, in an interview, you're in charge. You have the information. You see this all the time in political interviews, where the reporter will ask them a question, and the politician will acknowledge the question and then proceed to answer the question that they would have liked asked. And you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to be on your toes about, you know, that question. So let me give you an example. Say, for instance, you are giving an interview on COVID-19, and a reporter asks you about the impact of the murder of George Floyd. That's not one that you pivot away from, because you'll look like, first of all, you're uncaring and out of touch with what's going on. So you have a judgment call to make in terms of the impact of the question that the reporter is asking, particularly if it's going somewhere where you don't want to go, versus the need for you to be able to look like a caring human being to your audiences.
So for our final question, we have one from the audience. It was,
Okay.
says, where's the line drawn on social media when it comes to hate speech versus First Amendment rights?
Yeah, well, there's two aspects of that. One is the definition of hate speech by the host of the social media. So, for instance, Facebook and Twitter, etc., they have their own policies on hate speech. In terms of your own athletic or university-controlled channels, there is a balance. But you are under no obligation whatsoever to give anyone a platform for hate speech. And it should be addressed, if it's your branded platform, it should be addressed immediately.
Thank you for taking your time from your busy schedule to chat with us today. You truly have helped us understand the importance of the media and ways on properly handling these outlets. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest.
Okay. Once again, I apologize for the internet issues.
It's no problem. Thank you for being here. And to everyone, thank you for attending day 2 of the symposium. A short survey will be sent out to your email. Please complete it as soon as you can so we can have immediate feedback on how everything's going. And the third and final day of the symposium will begin tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Time. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.